from the list that has been given, some items that are being put as okay to do are certainly questionable. Like when you say circumcision,
African Christian. I am a man from Africa.
Lemuel, let's stop there. So I'm saying, from the answers we are given, you can't go by every answer you got. And I was giving the example of circumcision. Unless you say boy circumcision, if you say circumcision is biblically okay, are you including that of the girls? And we can go on. There are several of them. So I'll spend a bit of time just before I finish in trying to answer the same questions. But we start by looking at Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15 has the answer to our topic. This topic is so important that the Bible gave it a full chapter answering the question, how are the Gentiles and Jews to respond to their traditions? The Jews were saying the Gentiles should just forget about theirs and copy ours. But if you read the book of Acts 15, you see the arguments were, those customs have not helped the Jews. The Jews have had to put their trust in Jesus to be saved. So how can you ask the Gentiles to copy customs that never helped the Jews anyway? So they came to a conclusion that the Gentiles are free to continue with their customs, but not their religion. If you read verse 20, you will see what it says. Instead, we should write to them, to the Gentiles, telling them to abstain. The word abstain is a very strong word. Have nothing to do with. Only 4 items. Only 4 items. Item number 1, food polluted by idols. That is making it very simple. Religious ceremonies involve that whole pouring of libations, whatever. They are being told any religious worship, which we read a little earlier, is a no-go zone. So, Gentiles, continue your customs, but not customs that can make you be worshipping idols. Pollution of idols. So, you must ask yourself when you are called home to go for a ceremony, find out, is that ceremony just an innocent preferred way that your family have decided to do, or is it a worship? How do you know that? Very simple. Any custom that brings blessing, the word blessing is a religious word. It means it's not just something you do by preference. It's a worship. Any custom to avert a curse or protect you from being affected by witches or whatever, that is pollution of idols. So you can always tell. So if your mother, your grandmother tells you, hey, you can't marry before your older sister. If it's a preference, then you can go right ahead. But you tell, no, you can't do that. That's not allowed. You end up with problems. From where? Not from Christ, but from the ancestors. So it's part of ancestral worship. Anything you are told, this one, if you do, you are in trouble. That's why, for example, you'll be told in some of the tribes, after the burial, you must cut some hair. Oh, but I like my afro hairstyle. No, it's dangerous. If no hair is cut from your head, the ghosts of the dead person will visit you at night. So you realize then, the cutting of the hair is not just a custom, it's worship. Or you have just had a new baby, and they are saying the first hair cannot be cut by kinyozi, by the baba. It can only be cut by the mother-in-law. Oh, but I'm okay, I know how to cut hair. No, it's dangerous for you to cut your child's hair. That religious worship. So if you allow your mother-in-law to actually cut the hair of your child, you are a participant in demonic worship, according to what we are reading. So they were told that's the first thing you must have nothing to do. Number two, they were told to abstain from sexual immorality. Harrison, if you don't mind, can you read for us 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 39? 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 39. And you see why this is raised specifically as an area of concern. Are you there, Harrison, yet?
I am.
Just read for us.
It says 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 39. A wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord.
Thank you.
In my judgment.
Up to there. Can you see what the Bible is saying? Among the Kikuyus, a woman whose husband dies is said to be caught in dahu, some type of a sin. The only way of cleansing that sin is through sexual intercourse. So that it's no longer sex for procreation and or sex for pleasure. It's sex as a religious activity. So as I was growing up in 1950s, and because of Mau Mau, many people are dying, I would hear, hey, the mother of one of my friends has been cleansed. Initially I didn't understand. Until I understood cleansed means the brother of the husband has slept with the woman. Now, the Bible is saying that's a no-go zone, and you can see 1 Corinthians 7:39 is absolutely clear. Once you are a Christian and your husband dies, he has no power from the grave. You are free to stay single or to get married. The only condition is you marry somebody who belongs to God, not the brother of your husband, not a relative. And that's where now you start understanding that dowry becomes unattainable in the New Testament. That's why you don't hear of any dowry. And yet there is a lot of discussion on marriage in the Gospels, in the letters of Paul, in the letters of Peter, and the Revelation. They are discussing marriage, but never about dowry. Dowry is an Old Testament custom, and if your dowry is paid, even in the Old Testament, you now belong to that clan, and the brothers of your husband took you over. But can you see Paul is contradicting the Old Testament and contradicting our culture? The Luos call it wife inheritance. And she is saying, no. Once you are a Christian, the assumption is no dowry was paid. So therefore you will be free to marry anyone. That's why if you are my age mate and you have a daughter getting married, you cannot accept dowry. Because if you accept dowry, then unfortunately the husband of your daughter dies. Dowry entitles the brothers of the husband to take over your daughter. Because she was bought. She was bought. She belongs to that clan. So she can't go anywhere else. That's why I'm telling young people, Christians, do not get involved in dowry, because it will make it impossible for you to practice 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 39. So that's why I get very surprised when I hear some young people saying, we are going to trade or buy the girl. You can't do that as a Christian. Christians go for udhoni. They go for relationship creating. I agree with the person who said that the whole process of ensuring marriage is taken seriously, and therefore you don't just pick a girl and marry her. You go to your parents go to visit the parents of the girl, and the two families get to know each other and be friends. That is okay. What is not okay is when you start trading the girl. Because a Christian girl has no price. She is not valuable. She is invaluable. So she cannot have a price. So when you go to girlfriend's home with your parents, my brother, go with a gift and give the gift. And the gift, by the way, may be much more than the dowry they would have asked. But you can't call it dowry because dowry has a religious connotation. Call it a gift. However, there's a big difference between dowry and a gift. Dowry is determined by the seller. The moment the father of the girl is the one who says, I want 3 cows or I want 10 cows, that's now a selling. You have entered into dowry. But you could actually go as a boy and give him 20 cows as long as you are the one who has decided what to give. It's a gift. So the difference between dowry and a gift is dowry is demanded by the seller, but gifts are determined by the giver. Number 2, dowry is refundable. If the girl you marry cannot get a baby, tradition allows you to return her back to her parents and you refund your dowry. If it's a gift, it will not be recorded anywhere. It is not refundable. So if you give a gift and the 2 later separate, there's nothing you can go back to your father-in-law to ask for because there was no dowry. You just gave a gift. And number 3, if you choose the line of gift, it means from then onward you'll be treating the mother, the parents of your wife, just like the parents, your own parents. You give, when you visit the girl's side, you give gifts. When you go to the father's, to the boy's side, you give gifts. You treat them as parents. So and they do not count somewhere. Tick, dowry is now finished. So please understand, they are being told, don't use sex for religious reasons. You know, some people, you can't plant crops unless you have sex. That's not allowed. You are now getting into other reasons for sex. Others, you build a new house, you cannot enter that house unless you have sex. Anyway, I don't have enough time to deal with it, but you can get this discussion in my book. Thirdly, they are told, abstain from meat of strangled animals. In other words, religious method of slaughtering. The Bible is not against protein. You can eat meat. But when you start getting involved in the slaughtering in a specific religious way, that's a no-go zone. And then finally, number 4 and last, any custom that requires blood, either you are killing a chicken or a cow or whatever, any custom that requires blood is a no-go zone. That's why Kikuyu cannot be involved in Gurario. Gurario is a Kikuyu wedding. The Kikuyu traditional wedding is called Gurario. And the word Gurario means to shed blood. Kugurara, to shed blood. So you cannot have Gurario without shedding blood. And yet, you can see the Bible is saying that a no-go zone. So it means you cannot have that. The same thing with the people, even among the Luos. The wedding process will not get until you kill an animal. If you go to Kabani, there is something called Indeo, which is really the Kamba wedding. And you cannot have that without shedding blood. That's a no-go zone. In fact, I encourage people, when you're having a meeting in your home, and it could be mistaken for a traditional thing, buy the meat in a butchery. And let the visitors know, this meat was bought in the butchery. Obviously, they'll be very offended. Because if it's a religious thing, the animal must die in your home, and it must not be killed on a cemented area. It has to be where the blood can go into the soil so the ancestors can consume. That's certainly a no-go zone. It's a pity we have run out of time. It's almost time, and I want to allow enough time for questions. So the notes will be given to you. You can actually take time and go through them. And also, of course, if you are able to get the book, either from the bookshop, or if you check for the book in Amazon, the digital copy is available in Amazon. I finish by just giving you the checklist for customs that you can deal with. Now, checklist, item 1. So, as you start asking yourself, which customs can I go on with, which one can I drop? Start by classifying what is the religion and not just traditional preferred customs. So if you can, then you know if it's a religion and it's not Christianity, it's a no-go zone. If it's not religion, then you have a choice whether to do it or not to do it. But let me give you more questions under question 1. So ask yourself, does this custom bring me a blessing? If the answer is yes, that's a religious custom. Ask it differently. Does this custom bring me a curse or prevent a curse? If the answer is yes, that's a religious custom. Ask a third question. Does it provide protection from spiritual harm? If the answer is yes, that's religion. So really what we are saying is religions any custom that has spiritual consequence. And preferred customs are any custom that has no spiritual consequence, and so you can choose to do it or not to do it. That's the first thing you must verify. Whatever. For example, the other day somebody asked me that the sister's son was getting circumcised, and so the sister said she was sending her son to this brother to get permission or blessing in order to get circumcised. So he was saying, is it okay? Obviously not. Because the reason why you go to your mother's brother and not to your father's brother, because the Kikuyu religion demands that you get permission to be circumcised from your mother's brother. And if you don't, you might bleed to death. So for a Christian to actually get involved in something like that, you actually get involved in religion. In fact, I asked that brother, that has that boy done KCP? Yes. When you were doing KCP, why was he sent to you? No. Now for circumcision, he is being sent to you. Between circumcision of this boy and passing his exam, which will have a bigger impact on his life, he told me the exam. So how come when it comes to the exam, your sister will not send him to you? When it comes to circumcision, he will send to you. Can't you see? It's a religious thing. Anyway, I wish I had more time. Question number 2 in the checklist. Checklist item number 2. Ask, is it in line with the scriptures? Harrison, if you don't mind, read for me Hebrews chapter 1 verse 1 and 2. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 1 and 2. You must really check this custom we are discussing. Does it agree with the Bible or does it actually contradict the Bible? Harrison, are you there?
That's right. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 1 and 2 says, long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom he also created the world.
Have you heard? Before, you could have listened to what ancestors said. Oh, my grandfather said that you cannot marry a Luo. Therefore, even if the Holy Spirit is leading you to a Luo girl, you do it. The Bible is saying earlier, we listened to those prophets and traditions and old people and ancestors. But in these last days, not that he will speak, he has already spoken through his Son. What does that mean? Anything, even a pastor, a bishop, a prophet, an apostle, anything they say must be checked against the Bible. Please, if you look at the Gospel of John chapter 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word. But who is the Word? Go to verse 14. It says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So we know the other name for Jesus is God's Word. It therefore means anything not in line with God's Word is you have to check. And then here it's tricky because a lot of the council of elders, whether Kalenjin, whether Luos, they like saying, no, we also are Christians. Please understand, it is the Old Testament as interpreted by the New Testament. You cannot carry on a custom because it's in the Old Testament. We have just seen one. in the Old Testament, wife inheritance was there. The New Testament says no. So the Bible is one book. But please understand, the Old Testament is interpreted by the New Testament. And you need the Old Testament, because without the Old Testament, you will not understand what the New Testament is saying. You need both. Anyway, checklist item number 3. Check if these customs involves blood. We read earlier in Acts chapter 15 verse 20. Checklist item number 4. Ask if not doing it has bad mysterious consequences. Number 5. Ask if doing it has good mysterious consequences. 6. Does this custom make you subscribe to being Hallelujah fast? Or is it just an innocent custom? If it's a custom to emphasize you are Hallelujah rather than a Christian, that's a no-go zone. Because we agreed you are a Christian first. Of course you are born Hallelujah originally. But if you are born again, 1 Corinthians 5:17 is saying, you have become a new creation. All things are past. You are a new creation. That means, once you are born again, you start by shedding off all your traditional beliefs. And now you only believe the Bible. Then after that, you check your traditional customs, which you want to accept, which you are not to accept. So you can see you are primarily a Christian who happens to be Hallelujah. But the summary is, let me call it item 7. In everything, whatever customs we are discussing, the question you must ask is, how does this custom serve and glorify Jesus Christ, my Master? Does it? Or does it deny or betray him? That will help you to determine which way to go. My time is up. Let's go to question time. And you can post your questions in the